Hello, this is Grant Hughes of Grant Hughes Investigates on YouTube. Please hit the like, share, and subscribe button, and if you like what I'm doing and want to support the channel, please consider joining the channel with the join button just below the video. Today's video is going to specifically focus in on where Bryan Kohberger went after he returned from Moscow, Idaho for the second time on the 13th of November 2022. As we know, he murdered the four victims, Zana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonzalez, sometime between 4:06 and 4:18 or 19. So the window there is about 12 minutes. And as we know, Bryan Kohberger returned to Pullman, Washington via a very convoluted route. It's possible that he ditched one or some of the items on that route, given how rural and isolated those areas are. He then, sometime around 9 a.m., left Pullman, Washington again to head back to Moscow, Idaho. Now, did he go there because he knows that he left the sheath to his knife? Or was he just going back to watch to see his handiwork and law enforcement showing up? But to his surprise, they weren't even there yet. Then he returns back to Pullman, Washington, and then around 11:50 heads down to Lewiston, Idaho, and then over to Clarkston, Washington, and stops at a coffee shop and an Albertsons. After leaving Albertsons, there are many hours of missing time. Bryan Kohberger may have, after not finding the sheath to the knife, retrieved the items that he had placed on his drive back after the murders and drove them even further away down to the Lewiston-Clarkston area and then way out into the wilderness to dump those items. I can't think of another reason why he would need to take that trip on that day and be missing for so many hours. He obviously had his phone turned off, or he drove into an area where there was no coverage and spent many hours there. I will read through the probable cause document and you'll be able to visualize on the screen what it's saying. So we'll be taking a look at that right now. Further analysis of the cellular data provided showed that Kohberger's phone utilized cellular resources on November 13, 2022, consistent with the phone traveling from Pullman, Washington to Lewiston, Idaho via U.S. Highway 195. At approximately 12:36 p.m., Kohberger's phone utilized cellular resources that would provide coverage to Kate's Cup of Joe coffee stand located at 810 Port Drive, Clarkston, Washington. Surveillance footage from the U.S. Chef store located at 820 Port Drive, Clarkston, Washington, and adjacent to Kate's Cup of Joe showed a white Elantra consistent with suspect vehicle 1 drive past Kate's Cup of Joe at a time consistent with the cellular data from Kohberger's phone. At approximately 12:46 p.m., Kohberger's phone then utilized cellular data in the area of the Albertsons grocery store at 400 Bridge Street in Clarkston, Washington. Surveillance footage obtained from the Albertsons showed Kohberger exit the white Elantra, consistent with suspect vehicle 1 at approximately 12:49 p.m. Interior surveillance cameras showed Kohberger walk through the store, purchase unknown items at the checkout, and leave at approximately 1:04 p.m. This was a very significant moment for law enforcement when they were finally able to tie Bryan Kohberger's physical presence on camera being tied to the white Elantra, likely missing the front license plate, suspect vehicle 1. His phone had just pinged at a coffee shop minutes before, and the white Elantra, the same suspect vehicle that pulls into the Albertsons, was caught on camera right next door to the coffee shop. This is a key moment where they were able to tie Bryan Kohberger to the suspect vehicle, and the phone pings are absolutely consistent with the white Elantra as well. Additional analysis of records for Kohberger's phone indicated that between approximately 5:32 p.m. and 5:36 p.m., Kohberger's phone utilized cellular resources that provide coverage to Johnson, Idaho. Kohberger's phone then stops reporting to the network from approximately 5:36 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. That is consistent with Kohberger's phone being in the area that Kohberger's phone traveled in the hours immediately following the suspected time the homicides occurred. And if I was to interpret that last sentence, I think what they're saying is that is consistent with Bryan Kohberger being in the area that Kohberger's phone traveled in the hours immediately following the suspected time the homicides occurred. These are some thoughts that I have on the information that I just presented. Bryan Kohberger leaves the Albertsons parking lot at 1:04. It's an hour and 34-minute drive to get to Johnson, Idaho. So that would make it around 2:38, 2:40. His phone, however, didn't ping in the area until 5:30. So we're missing another almost 3 hours there. Then after his phone turned on at 5:32 to 5:36, it seemingly quit contacting the network at that point and didn't contact the network again until 8:30. We don't know where it contacted the network again at 8:30, and we aren't aware if they have any other ping information between 1:04 and 5:32 and 5:36 when the phone pinged in Johnson, Idaho. So he had at least 6 hours of missing time on that trip. Also, something to keep in mind is in Idaho on November 13th, 2022, it was dark by 5:22. That is when the sun went down. So it was absolutely dark when his phone pinged at 5:32 and 5:36 near Johnson, Idaho. And I would imagine being out in that area might not be a place that he'd traveled before, needed to use his phone for a moment to check out his map. Then he turned off his phone. Again, there's 6 hours of missing time that we don't have information for, but that's easily enough time to have hidden the knife, clothing that perhaps he stored in his vehicle or he placed immediately after the murders on that route home and then picked them up later on his route back down south, because on his drive back in the morning from murdering the 4 individuals, he wouldn't want to have any of those items in his vehicle with him. So he might have dumped his clothing and knife on those rural roads on the route back. And then obviously we know he went back to Moscow, Idaho later, perhaps to see if he could find the sheath, or again to admire his work. We don't know. Then later he leaves at around 11:50 from Pullman, Washington, and heads down south. So did he then stop and pick those items up again, put them in his car so that he could permanently dispose of those items out in the Johnson, Idaho area? I guess we might not ever know the answers to those questions, but hopefully at some point there'll be a trial and perhaps that information will come out. He might even plea and give his side of the story, and we'll get that information. We might not ever get the answers to some of the questions that we have. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch my videos. Make sure to hit that like button, share, and subscribe. And again, thank you for watching, and until next time, Be safe out there.